The stars had never looked so cold. Fleet Admiral Kethoran stood at the observation window of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and watched as ship after ship dropped out of hyperspace. Each arrival sent ripples of light across the darkness. Each ship represented centuries of Volanthi engineering, the pride of an empire that had ruled this sector of space for 12,000 years. 127 warships, the full strength of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet. Kethoran allowed himself a rare smile. His scales, deep green with age and marked by the scars of a dozen campaigns, shifted as his facial muscles moved. He was old by Volanthi standards, nearly 400 years, but his mind remained sharp and his ambition sharper still. Today would be the day that humanity learned its place in the galaxy. "Admiral," a voice called from behind him. "All ships have reported in. The fleet is assembled and awaiting your orders." Kethoran turned to face his second in command, Commander Vethal. The younger officer stood rigid, his yellow eyes bright with anticipation. Like most of the crew, Vethal had never fought humans before. He had only heard the tales of a small, soft species that had somehow clawed its way into space barely 300 years ago. 300 years. The thought made Kethoran want to laugh. His own species had been building warships when humans were still living in caves, hitting each other with rocks. The idea that such primitives could pose any threat to the hegemony was absurd. And yet, here they were. "Excellent," Kethoran said. "Signal all captains. I want a fleet-wide address in 1 hour. We have much to discuss before we begin our mission." "Yes, Admiral." As Vethal hurried away to carry out the order, Kethoran returned his gaze to the stars. Somewhere out there, past the swirling nebula known as the Cygnus Reach, lay human space, dozens of colony worlds, each one filled with millions of those strange, hairless creatures. They had spread quickly, these humans, too quickly for the hegemony's comfort. The High Council had tolerated their expansion at first. After all, space was vast, and the humans seemed content to keep to themselves. They traded peacefully with their neighbors. They signed treaties and honored them. They built colonies on worlds that no one else wanted. But then they had crossed the line. The Cygnus Reach had been Volanthi territory for 8,000 years. It did not matter that the hegemony had never bothered to colonize it. It did not matter that the worlds there were harsh and unwelcoming. The principle was what mattered. The Reach belonged to the Volanthi, and the humans had dared to plant their flags on Volanthi soil. 3 colonies now sat within the Reach. 3 insults to hegemony pride. The High Council had sent diplomatic protests, then warnings, then threats. The humans had ignored them all, claiming that uninhabited space belonged to whoever settled it first. Suk arrogance. Suk foolishness. Now, the time for diplomacy was over. The High Council had given Kethoran a simple order. Make an example of the humans. Burn their colonies. Kill their people. Send a message that the galaxy would not soon forget. Kethoran intended to carry out that order with pleasure. 1 hour later, he stood on the command platform of the Eternal Dominion's bridge, his image being broadcast to every ship in the fleet. Around him, the bridge crew worked at their stations, monitoring sensors and communications while trying not to stare at their admiral. "Warriors of the hegemony," Kethoran began, his voice carrying the weight of centuries. "Today we embark on a sacred mission. Today, we remind the galaxy why the Volanthi have ruled these stars for 12,000 years." He paused, letting the words sink in. "The humans believe themselves our equals. They look upon our empire and see not the glory of ages, but an obstacle to their expansion. They have taken what is ours. They have ignored our warnings. They have spat upon our honor." His clawed hands tightened on the railing before him. "No more. Today, we teach them the price of such arrogance. Our target is the human colony world of Arcadia Prime, their largest settlement in the Cygnus Reach. When we are finished, there will be nothing left. No buildings, no infrastructure, no survivors. Let the humans look upon the ashes of Arcadia Prime and understand what it means to challenge the Volanthi hegemony." Across the fleet, crews cheered. Kethoran could imagine them, thousands of warriors eager for battle, hungry for glory. It had been too long since the hegemony had fought a real war, too long since they had reminded the younger species of their place. "We jump in 6 hours, Kethoran continued. "Rest well, my warriors. Tomorrow, we make history. He cut the transmission and stepped down from the platform. Around him, the bridge erupted in activity as officers began preparing for the jump. Ketheron paid them little attention. His mind was already on Arcadia Prime, imagining the fires that would soon consume it. "Admiral?" The voice was quiet, hesitant. Ketheran turned to find a young officer standing behind him, a female with pale blue scales and nervous eyes. Her rank insignia marked her as a sub-commander, barely more than a junior officer. "What is it?" Ketheran demanded. He did not like being interrupted. "Forgive me, Admiral. I am Sub-Commander Wyrus, Tactical Analysis Division. I have concerns about the mission that I feel compelled to share." Ketheran studied her for a moment. She was young, probably not even 50 years old. Too young to remember the last time the hegemony had fought a serious war. Too young to understand how these things worked. "Speak," he said, more out of curiosity than any real interest in her opinion. Eurus swallowed hard. "Sir, I have been reviewing our intelligence on human military capabilities. Or rather, the lack of it. We have almost no reliable data on their warships. No confirmed specifications. No battle records. Nothing. Because there is nothing to know," Ketheran replied dismissively. "The humans have never fought a real war. They have a handful of patrol ships and some outdated defense platforms. They are prey, not predators. But sir, that is precisely my concern." Eurus pressed on despite the warning look in the Admiral's eyes. "We have sent 17 reconnaissance ships into human space over the past 2 years. Only 3 returned. The others simply vanished. Equipment failures, navigation errors. Space is dangerous, Sub-Commander. And the frontier colonies? The ones we have been raiding?" Eurus pulled out a data pad and offered it to the Admiral. "I have analyzed the reports. Something strange is happening. Our raiders attack human settlements, and the humans do not fight back. They do not flee. They do not send distress calls. They simply disappear." Ketheran glanced at the data pad but did not take it. "Your point?" "Sir, I believe the humans are hiding something. Some military capability that we do not understand. I recommend we proceed with caution. Perhaps send a smaller force first to test their defenses before committing the entire fleet." For a long moment, Ketheran said nothing. Then he laughed, a deep, rumbling sound that echoed across the bridge. "Sub-Commander Wyrus, I admire your dedication to your duties, but you are young, and you do not yet understand the nature of power." He gestured toward the observation window, where dozens of warships hung against the stars. "This fleet represents more firepower than the humans could accumulate in 1,000 years. We have weapons that can crack planets, shields that can withstand the heart of a star. We are the Valanthi hegemony, and we have ruled these stars since before humanity's ancestors crawled out of the ocean." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more weight than his earlier speech. "There is nothing the humans have that can threaten us. Nothing. Do you understand?" Eurus hesitated, then lowered her eyes. "Yes, Admiral. I understand." "Good. Return to your duties. And Sub-Commander?" He waited until she looked up again. "Keep your concerns to yourself. I will not have you spreading fear through my fleet." "Yes, Admiral." Eurus turned and walked away, her steps quick and her head down. Ketheran watched her go, then dismissed her from his thoughts entirely. Young officers were always nervous before their first battle. She would learn. The next 6 hours passed quickly. Crews ran final checks on weapons and shields. Engineers verified jump coordinates. Medical teams prepared for casualties that everyone expected would be minimal. Throughout the fleet, warriors sharpened their claws and recited ancient prayers to the gods of war. Ketheran spent the time in his quarters, reviewing the tactical plans for the 100th time. The attack would be simple and overwhelming. The fleet would drop out of hyperspace in a standard combat formation, surrounding Arcadia Prime on all sides. They would give the humans one chance to surrender, a formality, nothing more, and then begin the bombardment. Within hours, the colony would be nothing but smoking ruins. Simple, clean, efficient. When the time came, Ketheran returned to the bridge. He took his place on the command platform and surveyed his crew. Every face showed determination. Every eye burned with purpose. These were the finest warriors the hegemony had to offer, and they were ready. "All ships report ready for jump," Commander Vethal announced. "Then let us begin." Ketheran raised one clawed hand. All ships, engage hyperspace drives. For the glory of the hegemony, the stars stretched into lines of light as the Eternal Dominion leaped into hyperspace. Around it, 126 other ships did the same, the entire fleet vanishing from normal space in a matter of seconds. The journey took less than an hour. Hyperspace travel was one of the hegemony's oldest technologies, refined over millennia until it was as reliable as breathing. Kethoran spent the time standing at the observation window, watching the swirling colors of hyperspace and imagining the destruction to come. Approaching target system, the navigation officer announced. Exiting hyperspace in 30 seconds. Kethoran straightened. All hands to battle stations, weapons ready, shields at full power. The bridge exploded into controlled chaos as officers carried out his orders. Warning lights flashed. Klaxons sounded. Throughout the ship, warriors rushed to their positions, eager for the fight to begin. 10 seconds. Kethoran gripped the railing before him. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Exiting hyperspace now. The swirling colors vanished, replaced by the familiar black of normal space. Stars appeared, sharp and bright. And there, hanging like a jewel against the darkness, was Arcadia Prime, a blue-green world that looked almost peaceful from this distance. All ships have exited hyperspace, Bethel reported. Fleet formation is intact. No enemy contacts on sensors. As expected, Kethoran said. The humans probably do not even know we are here. Begin approach to Arcadia Prime. Standard attack formation. Yes, Admiral. The fleet began to move. 127 ships advancing toward the helpless colony world. Kethoran allowed himself another smile. This would be easier than he had thought. The humans truly had no defenses worth mentioning. By this time tomorrow, Arcadia Prime would be. Admiral, the shout came from the sensor station, where a young officer was staring at his display with wide eyes. What is it? Kethoran demanded. Contact, sir. Hyperspace signature detected at the edge of the system. Something just arrived. Human reinforcements? How many ships? The sensor officer checked his readings twice before answering. When he spoke, his voice was strange, confused, uncertain. One ship, Admiral. Just one. Kethoran frowned. One ship? Against our entire fleet? He laughed, and several officers around the bridge laughed with him. The humans are either very brave or very stupid. Put it on the main display. The forward screen flickered, then showed a magnified image of the new arrival. Kethoran's laughter died in his throat. The ship was unlike anything he had ever seen. It was roughly the size of a cruiser, perhaps 300 meters long. But its shape was wrong, all smooth curves and impossible angles that seemed to shift and change even as he watched. Its hull was black, but not the black of painted metal. It was the black of empty space, of absolute darkness, of something that absorbed light rather than reflected it, and it was moving toward them. Get me readings on that ship, Kethoran ordered, his voice carefully controlled. Mass, energy signatures, weapons systems, everything. Trying, Admiral. The sensor officer's claws danced over his console. Mass readings are inconsistent. The ship appears to weigh approximately 50,000 tons, but the readings keep fluctuating. Energy signatures are off the charts, but I cannot determine their source. And weapons systems, he trailed off. Weapons systems what? I cannot detect any, sir. But that does not mean they are not there. I am not sure our sensors can even properly scan this vessel. Kethoran stared at the screen. The strange ship continued to approach, moving with a grace that seemed almost organic. It made no attempt to evade or hide. It simply came, steady and inexorable. For the first time in centuries, Fleet Admiral Kethoran felt something he barely recognized. Fear. He crushed it immediately. He was a Valanthi warrior, commander of the mightiest fleet in the sector. He would not be intimidated by a single ship, no matter how strange it appeared. Signal the destroyer squadron, he ordered. 12 ships should be more than enough to handle whatever this is. Tell them to intercept and capture the vessel if possible. I want to know what we are dealing with. Yes, Admiral. As the orders went out, Kethoran continued to watch the mysterious ship. Somewhere in the back of his mind, Sub-Commander Eurus's words echoed. I believe the humans are hiding something. He pushed the thought away. Whatever this ship was, it was still just one ship. One ship against the might of the Valanthi hegemony. What could it possibly do? The 12 destroyers of the Valanthy 7th Squadron moved through space like predators closing in on wounded prey. Each ship was 200 meters of killing power, sleek, fast, and armed with enough weaponry to reduce a small moon to rubble. Together, they represented more firepower than most species could field in their entire military. Captain Morith commanded the lead destroyer, the Swift Vengeance. He was a veteran of 30 years, a warrior who had fought in border skirmishes and suppressed rebellions across a dozen worlds. He had never lost a battle, and he did not intend to start today. "Distance to target?" he asked, keeping his voice calm despite the tension he felt. 40,000 kilometers in closing, Captain. We will be in weapons range in approximately 3 minutes. Moreth nodded and studied the image on his tactical display. The human ship, if that was what it was, continued to drift toward them at a leisurely pace. It had not changed course since being detected. It had not raised shields or powered weapons. It simply hung there in the darkness, that impossible black hull seeming to drink in the light of distant stars. "Any response to our hails?" "None, Captain. The vessel is not acknowledging our communications." "Strange. Even the most primitive species usually responded when a fleet of warships approached them. Either the humans aboard that ship were very confident, or they were very foolish." Moreth suspected the latter. This was probably some kind of reconnaissance vessel, sent to observe the Valanthy fleet before scurrying back to report. The crew had likely panicked when they realized how badly outmatched they were. They were probably sitting in the dark, hoping that if they stayed quiet, the predators would pass them by. It would not work. "All ships," Moreth announced over the squadron channel. "Weapons free. Disable that vessel and prepare boarding parties. The Admiral wants prisoners." 11 acknowledgements came back, each captain confirming their readiness. The squadron spread into a standard envelopment pattern, surrounding the human ship on all sides. There would be no escape. "Weapons range in 30 seconds, the tactical officer reported. Moreth allowed himself a small smile. This would be over quickly. 20 seconds. 10. "We are in range, Captain." "Fire." 12 destroyers opened fire simultaneously. Plasma beams lanced across the void, each one carrying enough energy to melt through starship armor like a hot knife through soft flesh. Missiles followed 36 of them, streaking toward the target with deadly precision. Kinetic rounds, fired from electromagnetic cannons at a fraction of the speed of light, completed the barrage. The human ship disappeared behind a wall of fire and light. For 5 seconds, Moreth's crew could see nothing through the chaos of their own weapons. Then the sensors recalibrated, cutting through the interference to show them the result of their attack. Moreth's smile vanished. The human ship sat exactly where it had been before, untouched, unmarked, as pristine as the moment it had arrived. The plasma beams had not even scorched its hull. The missiles had detonated against some invisible barrier and accomplished nothing. The kinetic rounds. Moreth stared at his display in disbelief. The kinetic rounds were still there, frozen in space just meters from the human ship's hull. They hung motionless, suspended by some force that his sensors could not explain. Thousands of projectiles, each one moving at incredible speed just moments ago, now held perfectly still like insects trapped in amber. "What?" one of his officers whispered. "What is that?" Before anyone could answer, the human ship began to glow. It started as a faint shimmer along the vessel's edges, a ripple in space that made Moreth's eyes water to look at. Then the glow intensified, spreading across the hull until the entire ship blazed with cold blue light. The frozen kinetic rounds began to disintegrate, breaking apart into atoms that were absorbed into the light, and then reality itself seemed to fold. Moreth had no other way to describe it. Space twisted around his squadron, bending in ways that violated everything he knew about physics. He saw the Crimson Fury to his left stretch like taffy, its hull elongating impossibly before snapping back. He saw the Warrior's Pride to his right simply cease to exist for a fraction of a second before reappearing in a different position. Then he saw nothing at all. The fold closed around the 12 destroyers like a fist. For one eternal moment, Moreth experienced something that no Valanthy had ever experienced before, the sensation of being compressed, of being squeezed down into a space far too small to contain him. He tried to scream, but his lungs had already collapsed. 3 seconds. That was all it took. When the fold released, when space returned to its normal shape, there were no destroyers left. There was only debris, twisted metal, and shattered hulls, and the frozen bodies of warriors who had never even had time to understand what killed them. 12 ships, carrying over 3,000 crew members, reduced to scattered wreckage in the time it took to draw a breath. The human ship drifted serenely through the destruction, its hull still glowing faintly, completely unharmed. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, silence reigned. Fleet Admiral Kethoran stood motionless, his claws still gripping the railing, his eyes fixed on the main display. Around him, his officers stared at their screens with expressions of shock and disbelief. No one spoke, no one moved. For a long moment, the only sound was the gentle hum of the ship's systems. Then someone dropped a data pad. The clatter seemed impossibly loud in the stillness. "Admiral?" Commander Vethal's voice was barely a whisper. "Admiral, the destroyer squadron. They are gone. All of them." In 3 seconds, Kethoran did not respond. He could not respond. His mind was struggling to process what he had just witnessed. 12 warships, crewed by some of the finest warriors in the hegemony, destroyed in 3 seconds by a single vessel. Not damaged, not disabled, destroyed utterly, completely, in ways that defied explanation. This was impossible. This could not be happening. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the human ship." The sensor officer's words snapped Kethoran back to reality. He straightened, forcing his expression into something that resembled calm authority. "Put it through." The main display flickered. The image of the human ship was replaced by something even more disturbing. Text, written in perfect Valanthi script. The characters glowed white against a black background, each one formed with absolute precision. The message was simple. 7 words that changed everything. "You have been judged. Withdraw or face extinction." No one on the bridge moved. No one breathed. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. "Arrogance," Kethoran growled, finding his voice at last. "Human arrogance. They destroy 12 ships and believe they can threaten the entire hegemony." "Sir, with respect," Vethal began carefully. "What we just witnessed, I have never seen anything like it. Our weapons had no effect. There, whatever that was, it tore through our destroyers like they were not even there. One ship." Kethoran whirled on his second-in-command, scales bristling with anger. "It is one ship, Vethal. One. We have 115 warships remaining. Whatever trick they used against the destroyers, they cannot use it against our entire fleet. Admiral, perhaps we should contact High Command, report what we have seen, request instructions, and tell them what?" Kethoran's voice dripped with contempt. "That we ran from a single human vessel? That the mightiest fleet in the sector was frightened away by some parlor trick?" He shook his head violently. "No, we will not be remembered as cowards. We will destroy this ship, complete our mission, and return home as heroes." He turned to face the main display again. The message still glowed there, mocking him. Withdraw or face extinction. Who did these humans think they were? They had existed for less than an eye blink compared to the Valanthi. They knew nothing of war, nothing of conquest, nothing of the true nature of power, and they would learn their lesson today. "All ships," Kethoran announced, his voice carrying across every channel in the fleet. "This is the Admiral. What you have witnessed is a demonstration, nothing more. The humans have some new weapon, some trick designed to frighten us, but we are Valanthi. We do not frighten easily." He paused, letting his words sink in. "That ship destroyed 12 of our vessels. For that, there must be payment. I am ordering the full fleet to engage. All 115 ships. We will surround that vessel, overwhelm its defenses with sheer firepower, and reduce it to atoms. Let no warrior hesitate. Let no captain show weakness. For the glory of the hegemony, attack." Across the fleet, crews that had been frozen in shock sprang into action. Officers shouted orders. Weapons powered up. Shields strengthened. The Valanthi were a proud people, and Kethoran's words had stirred that pride. Whatever this human ship was, it was still just one ship. It could not possibly stand against the combined might of an entire fleet. Could it? Sub-Commander Yuris watched from her station as the fleet began to move. Her scales had turned pale, a sign of extreme stress in her species, and her claws trembled slightly as they rested on her console. Unlike the Admiral, unlike most of the crew, She felt no surge of pride or determination. She felt only fear. What she had just witnessed was not a parlor trick. It was not some clever weapon system that could be overwhelmed with numbers. It was something else entirely, something that her scientific mind could barely comprehend. The way space had folded around those destroyers. The way the kinetic rounds had simply stopped in mid-flight. The way the entire attack had been absorbed without leaving a single mark on the enemy hull. This was technology beyond anything the Volanthi possessed. Beyond anything anyone possessed, as far as she knew. This was the kind of power that existed only in ancient legends, in stories of gods and demons that her ancestors had told around campfires millennia ago. And the Admiral wanted to attack it. Sub-Commander Eurus. She looked up to find Commander Vethal standing beside her station. His expression was carefully neutral, but she could see the fear in his eyes, the same fear she felt. "Commander," she acknowledged, "the Admiral has ordered all tactical officers to coordinate the attack. You are to analyze the enemy vessel's defenses and identify weaknesses." Eurus almost laughed. Weaknesses? That ship had just shrugged off enough firepower to crack a planet. What weakness could she possibly find? But she kept her thoughts to herself and nodded. "Yes, Commander. I will do what I can." Vethal hesitated, then leaned closer. His voice dropped to a whisper. "Eurus, what you said earlier, about the humans hiding something. You were right. I should have listened. It does not matter now, Commander." "No, I suppose it does not." He straightened and walked away, leaving Eurus alone with her screens and her fear. The fleet moved into position, spreading out to surround the human ship from every direction. 115 warships, each one bristling with weapons, formed a sphere of death with the enemy vessel at its center. From any other perspective, it would have looked overwhelming, an impossible display of military might that no single ship could hope to survive. From Eurus's perspective, it looked like a funeral procession. She pulled up every sensor reading she could find, every scan of the enemy ship, every piece of data from the destroyer squadron's brief engagement. She analyzed power signatures and hull composition and energy patterns. She ran simulations and calculations and probability matrices, and she found nothing. Nothing that could explain what she had witnessed. Nothing that could help her people survive what was coming. The human ship sat motionless at the center of the Volanthi formation, that black hull absorbing light, those impossible angles shifting subtly whenever she looked directly at them. It had not moved since the destroyer's destruction. It had not raised shields or powered weapons, or made any attempt to escape. It was waiting. "All ships in position," the fleet coordinator announced. "Ready to fire on your command, Admiral." Kethoran stood tall on the command platform, his fear buried deep beneath layers of pride and determination. He would not show weakness. He would not falter. He was a Volanthi warrior, and he would die before he ran from a single enemy ship. "All ships," he said. "Open fire." 115 warships fired simultaneously. The space around the human vessel became a solid wall of destruction. Plasma beams converged from every direction, their combined energy output exceeding that of a small star. Missiles by the thousands streaked through the void, their warheads carrying enough explosive power to devastate continents. Kinetic rounds beyond counting filled the gaps, a storm of metal traveling at relativistic speeds. For 10 seconds, the human ship disappeared behind the onslaught. Sensors overloaded. Screens went white with interference. The sheer amount of energy being released created a miniature sun at the heart of the Volanthi formation. Then the sensors cleared, and the human ship was still there. Not damaged, not scratched, not even slightly disturbed. Every beam, every missile, every round had been stopped, frozen in place just like before, held by that invisible force that defied all understanding. The ship floated serenely at the center of a sphere of suspended destruction. Untouchable, invincible, Kethoran stared at the display. His claws had dug furrows into the railing. His scales had lost all color. "That is impossible," he whispered. "That is impossible." The human ship began to glow again. This time, Eurus was watching closely. She saw the moment when the glow became something else, when it expanded outward, pushing against the wall of frozen weapons that surrounded the vessel. She saw the missiles and beams and projectiles begin to vibrate, to shift, to turn. She understood what was about to happen a fraction of a second before it did. "All ships," she screamed into her communicator. "Evasive action. Evasive action now, but it was too late. The sphere of destruction reversed. Every weapon that the Volanthi had fired came screaming back at them, moving 10 times faster than before, carrying energies that had been amplified by whatever force had captured them. Plasma beams that had been meant to destroy now destroyed their makers. Missiles that had been meant to kill now killed their launchers. Kinetic rounds that had been fired in anger now returned that anger tenfold. 43 ships died in the first second. The Crimson Dawn took a direct hit from its own plasma cannons and simply ceased to exist. The Wrath of Keth was torn apart by missiles it had launched just moments before. The Victory Eternal was shredded by kinetic rounds that punched through its hull like needles through cloth. Ship after ship exploded, filling space with fire and debris and the frozen bodies of the dead. And then the human ship moved. It did not fly. It did not accelerate. It simply appeared in a new location, as if it had always been there and everywhere else was just a mistake. One moment it was at the center of the formation. The next moment it was beside the heavy cruiser Dominion's Pride, close enough to touch. A pulse of energy, invisible and silent, rippled out from the human ship. The Dominion's Pride folded in on itself like paper being crumpled by a giant hand. Its reactor detonated, sending a shockwave through nearby vessels. The human ship moved again, and again, and again. It was everywhere at once, appearing beside one ship after another, each appearance accompanied by death. Some vessels were crushed, some were torn apart, some simply vanished, as if they had never existed at all. The Volanthi fleet, so proud and mighty just minutes before, scattered in panic. Eurus watched her tactical display as ship after ship winked out of existence. Red icons representing Volanthi vessels disappeared faster than she could count. The fleet formation had completely collapsed. Captains were fleeing in all directions, trying desperately to escape the nightmare that had descended upon them. None of them succeeded. The human ship was everywhere. No matter how fast they ran, no matter which direction they fled, it was always there, waiting, hunting, killing. Escape was impossible. Survival was impossible. The most powerful fleet in the sector was being slaughtered like animals. How many? Admiral Kethoran's voice was barely recognizable. How many have we lost? Eurus checked her display, though she already knew the answer. 89 ships destroyed, Admiral. 16 disabled or crippled. We have 11 vessels still operational. 11. Out of 127. In less than 2 minutes, Kethoran stood frozen on the command platform, his eyes wide and empty. The warrior who had laughed at human primitives, who had dismissed warnings of hidden capabilities, who had ordered his fleet to attack a single ship, that warrior was gone. In his place stood a broken old man who had just watched his life's work destroyed in the time it took to eat a meal. Admiral? Commander Vethal's voice was urgent. Admiral, we must retreat. We must warn the hegemony. If we stay here, we all die. Kethoran did not respond. He simply stared at the main display, where the human ship had paused its slaughter and now floated motionless among the wreckage. It was waiting again, watching, judging. Admiral, Vethal grabbed Kethoran's shoulder and shook him. Give the order. Something broke behind the Admiral's eyes. His jaw tightened. His scales rippled with something that might have been shame or rage or despair. All ships, he said, his voice hollow and dead. Retreat. Maximum speed. Get us out of here. The 11 surviving vessels turned and ran. Behind them, the human ship did not follow. It simply hung there among the debris of the fleet it had destroyed. That impossible black hull absorbing light. Those strange angles shifting in the darkness. And on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, Sub-Commander Weirus realized that she was shaking. Not with fear, though the fear was still there. A cold weight in her chest that would never fully leave. She was shaking with something else. Something she had never expected to feel. Oh, she had just witnessed the death of Volanthi supremacy. She had just watched 12,000 years of military dominance end in less than 2 minutes. And despite the horror of it, despite the thousands of lives lost and the destruction wrought, she could not help but feel a strange sense of wonder. Humanity had been spacefaring for 300 years. 300 years compared to 12,000. And yet they had built that. Whatever that ship was, whatever power it possessed, it represented something far beyond anything the Volanthi had ever imagined. The message came again. transmitted to all surviving ships. The same 7 words, glowing white against black. You have been judged. Withdraw, or face extinction. This time, Eurus thought, we might actually listen. The 11 surviving ships fled through the void like wounded animals, running from a predator. Their engines burned at maximum power, pushing the vessels faster than their designers had ever intended. Behind them, the wreckage of the 3rd Expeditionary Fleet drifted silently among the stars. 116 ships, reduced to twisted metal and frozen corpses. On the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, chaos reigned. Officers shouted over each other, trying to coordinate the retreat. Damage control teams raced through the corridors, fighting fires and sealing breaches. Medical staff struggled to treat the wounded, many of whom screamed in pain or lay silent in shock. The flagship had not taken a direct hit, but nearby explosions had battered its hull and sent shrapnel tearing through compartments. Admiral Kethoran sat in his command chair, motionless. His eyes stared at nothing. His claws hung limp at his sides. The warrior who had commanded the mightiest fleet in the sector was gone, replaced by a shell that breathed and blinked but no longer truly lived. Commander Vethal had taken command by necessity. He stood at the tactical station, coordinating the retreat, but his hands trembled as he worked. The fear he had suppressed during the battle now threatened to overwhelm him. Distance from the enemy vessel? He demanded. 50,000 kilometers and increasing. The sensor officer reported. His voice cracked. The human ship is not pursuing. It has remained stationary at the battle site. Maintain current course and speed. Do not slow down until we reach the jump point. Yes, Commander. Vethal allowed himself a small breath of relief. They were escaping. Somehow, impossibly, they were escaping. The human ship had chosen not to chase them down. Perhaps it could not. Perhaps its terrible weapons only worked at close range. Perhaps, Commander, Sub-Commander. Wyrus's voice cut through his thoughts. We need to talk. Vethal turned to face her. Eurus looked pale, her scales almost gray with stress, but her eyes were clear and focused. Unlike most of the crew, she seemed to have moved past the initial shock and was already thinking about what came next. Not now, Sub-Commander. We are in the middle of a retreat. That is precisely why we need to talk now. Eurus stepped closer, lowering her voice so that only Vethal could hear. I have been analyzing the sensor data from the battle. What I found. The Admiral needs to hear this. The High Council needs to hear this. Vethal glanced at Kethoran, who remained frozen in his chair. The Admiral is indisposed. Then you need to hear it. Eurus pulled out her datapad and brought up a series of readings. Look at these energy signatures. Look at the way space distorted around the human ship. Look at the speed of its movements between attack positions. Vethal studied the data, though he understood only a fraction of what he was seeing. What am I looking at? Impossible things. Things that violate the fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. Eurus's voice dropped even lower. Commander, that ship was not using any technology we know. It was not using any technology anyone knows. What we witnessed out there, it was like watching a god fight with ants. The humans are not gods. No, but they have built something that might as well be. Eurus scrolled through more data. I tracked its movements during the battle. It appeared in 47 different positions over 90 seconds. That is not possible with any known propulsion system. It was not moving through space, it was folding space around itself, appearing wherever it wanted to be instantaneously. You are saying it can teleport? I am saying it does not experience space the same way we do, and that is just one of its capabilities. She brought up another screen. Look at this, the energy readings from when it reversed our weapons fire. That should have required more power than a star produces. The ship generated that energy from nowhere. It did not have reactors large enough. It did not have fuel reserves. The energy simply appeared. Vethal felt cold. What are you telling me, Sub-Commander? Eurus met his eyes. I am telling you that we did not lose because we were outgunned. We lost because we were fighting something that exists beyond our understanding. That ship is not a weapon, Commander. It is a force of nature. And we flew 127 warships directly into it. For a long moment, Vethal said nothing. He looked at the main display, where the distance counter continued to climb. 70,000 kilometers, 80,000. The human ship remained a tiny dot at the center of the debris field, motionless and silent. Why did it stop? he asked finally. If it could have destroyed us all, why did it let us escape? I do not know. Perhaps it wanted witnesses. Perhaps it wanted us to carry a message back to the hegemony. Eurus paused. Or perhaps it simply does not consider us a threat worth chasing. That thought was somehow worse than all the others. The idea that a single human ship could slaughter most of their fleet, and then simply let the survivors go, the way a predator might release a mouse it had grown bored of playing with, it made Vethal feel small in a way he had never felt before. We need to warn the hegemony, he said. They need to know what they are dealing with. Agreed. But Commander, Eurus hesitated. I do not think warning them will be enough. If the humans have one ship like this, they might have more. And if they have more, then nothing we do will matter. No fleet we could build, no weapon we could develop, no strategy we could devise would make a difference. We would be fighting the tide. Then what do you suggest? Before Eurus could answer, the sensor officer shouted a warning. Commander, the human ship, it is moving. Vethal spun toward the main display. The dot that represented the human vessel had begun to glow, just as it had before each attack. His heart seized in his chest. How fast? Which direction? I cannot tell. The readings are confused. It is like the ship is everywhere and nowhere at once. Evasive maneuvers. All ships, scatter formation. But even as he gave the order, Vethal knew it was useless. They had seen how fast the human ship could move. There was nowhere to hide, nowhere to run that it could not reach in an instant. If it wanted to destroy them, they were already dead. The glow intensified. Space around the human ship began to ripple and fold. Vethal braced himself for death, and then the ship vanished. Not slowly, not with any fanfare. It simply ceased to be there. One moment it was at the center of the debris field, glowing with impossible energy. The next moment there was nothing but empty space where it had been. The bridge fell silent. Officers stared at their screens, waiting for the ship to reappear, waiting for the death blow that they knew must be coming. Seconds passed, then minutes. Nothing happened. Where did it go? Vethal demanded. Unknown, Commander. I cannot detect it anywhere in the system. It is just gone. Gone. The human ship had annihilated most of their fleet, delivered its message, and then simply left, as if the entire battle had been nothing more than a demonstration, a lesson taught to misbehaving children. Vethal sank into a nearby chair, his legs suddenly too weak to hold him. Around him, the crew began to relax slightly, though the tension never fully left their faces. They were alive, against all odds, against all logic. They were alive. But for how long? Continue to the jump point, Vethal ordered, his voice hollow. Best speed. We need to reach Keth Prime and report to the High Council. Yes, Commander. As the surviving ships limped toward salvation, Sub-Commander Eurus returned to her station and began compiling her report. She documented everything, every sensor reading, every analysis, every conclusion she had drawn. It would not be a pleasant report to deliver. It would not be a report that the High Council wanted to hear, but it was the truth. And the truth, no matter how terrible, was better than the comfortable lies that had led them here. She worked for hours, organizing data and writing summaries, pausing only to check on the Admiral's condition, unchanged, and to grab a quick meal from the ship's emergency rations. By the time the fleet reached the jump point, her report was complete, a comprehensive document that detailed the complete and utter failure of Volanthi military might against a single human vessel. The jump to Keth Prime took 3 days. 3 days of silence, of fear, of whispered conversations in darkened corridors. 3 days of warriors who had expected glory instead processing trauma. 3 days of officers who had believed themselves invincible coming to terms with their own mortality. Admiral Kethoran did not leave his quarters during the journey. Medical officers reported that he was physically unharmed but unresponsive, awake but not present, breathing but not truly alive. The warrior who had laughed at human primitives had been broken by what he had witnessed. His pride, which had been the core of his identity for 4 centuries, had been shattered beyond repair. Vethal assumed full command without ceremony or argument. No one questioned his authority. No one had the energy to question anything anymore. When the Eternal Dominion and its 10 companion vessels finally emerged from hyperspace above Keth Prime, they were met by a patrol squadron that had been scrambled to investigate. The patrol commander's voice came through the communication system, confused and concerned. "This is Commander Reth of the Keth Prime Defense Force. Eternal Dominion. We were not expecting you for another week. What is your status? Where is the rest of the fleet?" Vethal closed his eyes for a moment before responding. "Commander Reth, this is Commander Vethal, acting commanding officer of the Eternal Dominion. The rest of the fleet is gone. I need an immediate audience with the High Council. We have information of critical importance to the survival of the hegemony." A long pause. "Gone? What do you mean, gone?" The Third Expeditionary Fleet had 127 ships. "I know." Vethal's voice was flat, empty of emotion. "Now we have 11. Please escort us to orbit, Commander. Time is not on our side." The patrol ships fell into formation around the survivors, and together they descended toward Keth Prime. The planet grew larger in the viewport, a green and gold world that had been the heart of the Volanthi hegemony for 12,000 years. Its cities gleamed with ancient architecture. Its orbital stations bristled with weapons. Its people lived in comfort and security, confident in the might of their military. None of them knew that their world had just changed forever. The High Council chamber was a vast, circular room at the heart of the hegemony's capital city. 12 seats arranged around a central platform, each one occupied by a counselor who represented millions of Volanthi citizens. These were the most powerful individuals in the known galaxy, leaders who controlled resources, commanded armies, and shaped the fate of civilizations. Today, they sat in stunned silence as Subcommander Eurus delivered her report. And, at that point, the human vessel ceased its attack and transmitted its final message before departing the system. Eurus's voice was steady, professional, betraying none of the terror she had felt during the events she described. "The complete sensor logs and analysis are available in the data packet I have provided. I am prepared to answer any questions the Council may have." For a long moment, no one spoke. The counselors stared at their personal displays, reviewing the data, watching the recordings, trying to process information that challenged everything they believed about the universe. Finally, High Counselor Vethak spoke. He was the oldest member of the Council, nearly 700 years old, and his word carried tremendous weight. "Sub-Commander Eurus, you are asking us to believe that a single human vessel destroyed 116 of our warships in less than 2 minutes, using technologies that, according to your own analysis, should not exist." "Yes, High Counselor. That is exactly what I am asking you to believe, because that is exactly what happened." "And Admiral Kethoran? Where is he? Why is he not delivering this report himself?" Commander Vethal stepped forward. "High Counselor, Admiral Kethoran has been hospitalized. The medical staff describe his condition as severe psychological trauma. He is no longer fit for duty. A decorated warrior, broken by witnessing a single battle that killed over 30,000 of our people in the time it takes to eat a meal." Vethal met the High Counselor's eyes without flinching. "I was there, High Counselor. I saw what that ship could do. I watched it fold space around our destroyers and crush them like insects. I watched it appear in 47 different positions in 90 seconds and destroy a warship with each appearance. I watched our weapons, the most powerful weapons in the sector, strike its hull without leaving a single mark." He paused. "Admiral Kethoran is not the only one who will need time to recover from what we witnessed." The council chamber fell silent again. The counselors exchanged glances, communicating through subtle movements of scales and claws, a language that their species had developed over millennia of political maneuvering. "This is a disaster," Counselor Merith declared. She was young for a council member, barely 300 years old, and known for her blunt honesty. "A complete and utter disaster. Our most powerful fleet, gone. 12,000 of our best warriors, dead. And now the humans know that we meant to destroy one of their colonies. They will respond. They will retaliate. And if they have more ships like the one we encountered, we do not know that they have more," Counselor Yeth interjected. "This could have been their only vessel of this type. A prototype. An experimental weapon. Then why send it alone against our entire fleet?" Sub-Commander Wyrus spoke without being asked, drawing sharp looks from several counselors. She pressed on regardless. "If this was a prototype, if it was unique and irreplaceable, they would never have risked it in combat. They would have hidden it, protected it. Instead, they sent it directly into the path of our fleet without hesitation. That suggests either supreme confidence in its capabilities, or the knowledge that they have others to replace it if necessary. You speak above your station, Sub-Commander, High Counselor Vethak said coldly. I speak the truth, High Counselor, as I did before the fleet departed, when I warned Admiral Ketharan that we knew nothing about human military capabilities. Yuris lifted her chin. My warnings were ignored. Over 30,000 Valanthi died as a result. I will not allow my warnings to be ignored again. The High Counselor studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, he nodded. Your courage is noted, Sub-Commander. Very well, speak freely. What is your assessment of our situation? Yuris took a deep breath. This was her chance, perhaps the only chance the hegemony would get to make them understand the danger they faced. Our situation is desperate, she said. We have encountered a civilization that possesses technology far beyond anything we have ever seen. Technology that should not exist according to our understanding of physics. The human ship we encountered could move instantaneously across space, absorb any amount of damage, and destroy our vessels through methods we cannot explain, let alone counter. She pulled up a display showing the combat data. Look at these readings. The energy output of that single ship exceeded the combined output of our entire fleet. Its defenses were absolute nothing we fired even touched its hull. Its offense was overwhelming. It killed ships with gestures, with thoughts, with the casual ease of a child stepping on insects. And your recommendation? The High Counselor asked. Yuris hesitated. She knew what she was about to say would be unpopular. She said it anyway. We must sue for peace. Immediately. Before the humans decide that one fleet was not enough of a response. Before they bring more of those ships to our space. Before we learn that extinction is not just a threat, but a promise. The council chamber exploded into outrage. Counselors shouted over each other, demanding to know how she dared suggest surrender, accusing her of cowardice, of treason, of betraying 12,000 years of Valanthi honor. Their voices echoed off the ancient walls, a cacophony of wounded pride and desperate denial. Only High Counselor Vethak remained silent. He sat in his chair, watching the chaos around him, his ancient eyes thoughtful and sad. When the shouting finally died down, he raised one clawed hand for silence. The chamber fell quiet immediately, even in their rage. The counselors respected his authority. Sub-Commander Yuris has given us her recommendation, he said slowly. Many of you find it unacceptable. I understand. The thought of surrendering to a species we considered primitives just yesterday is difficult to accept. He paused. But consider this. 12,000 years ago, we were the primitives. We were the ones fighting with stones and sticks while other species ruled the stars. And we survived. We grew. We became what we are today. He rose from his chair, his old bones creaking but his voice strong. The humans have done in 300 years what took us 12,000. They have built something that can destroy our fleets without effort. Perhaps, instead of seeing them as enemies to be crushed, we should see them as what they truly are. The future. The council chamber was silent. No one argued. No one protested. They simply sat and absorbed the words of their oldest and wisest leader. We will send an embassy to the humans, Vethak declared. We will seek peace. We will offer friendship. And we will hope, pray, if any of you still remember how that they accept. He looked at Yuris, and for just a moment, she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen in a Valanthi leader before. Humility. Sub-Commander Yuris, you will lead this embassy. You warned us. You survived. You understand. You are our best hope. Yuris felt the weight of those words settle onto her shoulders. She straightened, meeting the High Counselor's gaze with determination. I will not fail, High Counselor. I will find a way to save our people. Whatever it takes. The old counselor nodded slowly. See that you do, Sub-Commander. The fate of 12,000 years of civilization rests in your hands. Yuris bowed her head in acceptance. Somewhere out there, among the stars, a human ship waited a god of destruction that could erase her entire species on a whim. Her mission was to convince that god to show mercy. She had no idea how she would succeed, but she knew that she had to try. The alternative was unthinkable. The Valanthi hegemony had ruled this sector of space for 12 millennia. Now, their survival depended on the kindness of a species they had tried to destroy just days ago. The universe, Yuris reflected, had a cruel sense of humor. The diplomatic vessel Voice of Peace drifted through the darkness between stars, carrying Sub-Commander Wyrus and her small delegation toward an uncertain fate. It was a ship designed for ceremony rather than combat. Sleek and elegant, painted in the gold and green colors of the hegemony, equipped with comfortable quarters and impressive meeting rooms but almost no weapons. Eurus stood at the observation window of her quarters, watching the stars drift by. 3 weeks had passed since she had been given this mission. 3 weeks of preparation, of learning human customs and language, of selecting her team and planning her approach. 3 weeks of wondering if she was flying toward salvation or death. The humans had responded to the hegemony's request for peace talks with surprising speed. A single message, transmitted from somewhere deep within human space. Coordinates, a date, and a promise of safe passage. Nothing more. No demands, no conditions, no threats. Just an invitation. That simplicity terrified Wyrus more than any threat could have. Sub-Commander? A voice at her door. She turned to find her aide, a young male named Kethel, standing nervously in the entrance. "We are approaching the coordinates. The captain says we will arrive within the hour." "Thank you, Kethel. Tell the delegation to assemble in the main conference room. I will join them shortly." "Yes, Sub-Commander." He hesitated. "Sub-Commander, do you think the humans will listen? Do you think they will spare us?" Eurus considered lying, offering comforting words that she did not believe. She decided against it. Kethel deserved the truth. "I do not know," she said. "We tried to destroy one of their colonies. We attacked their ship without provocation. By any reasonable standard, they have every right to refuse us, to punish us, to wipe us from the stars." She paused. "But they invited us here instead of attacking. That gives me hope." Kethel nodded slowly. "Hope. Yes, I will hold on to that." He bowed and withdrew, leaving Eurus alone with her thoughts. She returned her gaze to the stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the human homeworld, a small blue planet in an unremarkable system that had somehow given birth to a species capable of building gods. She had studied everything she could find about humans in the past 3 weeks. Their history, their culture, their wars and triumphs and failures. She had learned about their brief existence compared to the Valanthi, their rapid technological progress, their strange combination of violence and compassion. What she had not found, what no Valanthi had ever found, was any hint of how they had built that ship, the vessel that had destroyed her fleet, the black nightmare that had folded space and crushed warships like toys, seemed to have appeared from nowhere. One day the humans were a minor species with primitive ships. The next day they had something that could challenge the gods themselves. How? Where had it come from? What secrets were the humans hiding? She hoped she was about to find out. The voice of peace dropped out of hyperspace at the designated coordinates. Eurus made her way to the bridge, where the captain and crew stood frozen at their stations, staring at the main display. She understood why immediately. The human ship was waiting for them. It hung motionless against the stars. That impossible black hull absorbing light, those strange angles shifting subtly whenever she looked directly at them. Seeing it again, even at a distance, made her scales crawl. Every instinct she possessed screamed at her to run, to flee, to get as far away from that thing as possible. She forced herself to remain calm. "Hail them." "Yes, Sub-Commander." The communications officer's claws trembled as he worked his console. "Channel open." Eurus stepped forward, making sure she was visible in the transmission. "This is Sub-Commander Eurus of the Valanthi Hegemony. Aboard the diplomatic vessel Voice of Peace. We have come in response to your invitation. We seek peace and understanding between our peoples." For a long moment, nothing happened. The human ship remained motionless and silent. Then a response came, not a message, but an action. A beam of light extended from the human vessel, connecting with the Voice of Peace in a way that made no sense. It was not a weapon, not a tractor beam, not anything that Valanthi technology could explain. "What is that?" the captain demanded. "What are they doing?" Before anyone could answer, the universe shifted. Eurus felt a moment of disorientation, a sensation of being everywhere and nowhere at once. The stars outside the viewport blurred and stretched. Reality folded around the Voice of Peace like a blanket, and then they were somewhere else. The diplomatic vessel now floated inside an enormous chamber, a hangar bay of some kind, though larger than any hangar Eurus had ever seen. The walls were smooth and white, curving gently overhead. Soft light came from everywhere and nowhere, and all around them, Suspended in perfect formation were more human ships. Eurus counted them. 12. 12 vessels identical to the one that had destroyed her fleet, each one radiating that same sense of impossible power, each one capable of ending the Volanthe hegemony single-handedly. By the ancient gods, the captain whispered, there are more of them. 12 more. Eurus felt her hope waver. She had known it was possible. She had even warned the council that the humans might have additional ships. But seeing them, actually seeing them, made the reality undeniable. The hegemony had not faced a single exceptional weapon. They had faced a fraction of human military might. A fraction so small that the humans had not even considered it a risk to send it alone against an entire fleet. Sub-commander. A new voice. Human. Speaking perfect Volanthe. It came from the ship's communications system. Gentle and calm. Welcome aboard the Prometheus. My name is Captain Nora Chen. I have been authorized to meet with you and your delegation. Please proceed to the airlock. You will find a shuttle waiting to bring you to my ship. Eurus took a deep breath. This was it. The moment that would determine the fate of her entire civilization. Understood, Captain Chen. We will be there shortly. She gathered her delegation 5 Volanthe diplomats, carefully selected for their intelligence and composure, and led them to the airlock. The shuttle waiting for them was human in design, smaller and more angular than Volanthe craft, but comfortable enough. A human crew member greeted them politely and helped them find seats. The flight to the Prometheus took only minutes. As they approached, Eurus studied the human ship through the shuttle's viewport. Up close, it was even more disturbing than she remembered. The hull seemed to shift and flow, never quite settling into a fixed shape. The darkness of its surface was absolute, a void that swallowed light and gave nothing back. What is it made of? One of her diplomats, an elderly male named Vethor, asked quietly. That hull. I have never seen anything like it. Neither have our scientists, Eurus admitted. They analyzed the sensor data for days. They could not explain it. The shuttle docked with the Prometheus, and the delegation disembarked into a corridor that looked surprisingly normal. White walls, simple lighting, a floor that felt solid and real beneath their feet. After the strangeness of the hull, the mundane interior was almost disappointing. A human woman waited for them at the end of the corridor. She was older than Eurus had expected, with gray-streaked hair and lines around her eyes that spoke of many years. Her uniform was simple dark blue, without decoration or rank insignia. She smiled warmly as they approached. Sub-Commander Wyrus, it is an honor to meet you. She extended her hand in what Wyrus recognized as a human greeting. I am Captain Nora Chen. Eurus took the offered hand carefully, mindful of her claws. Captain Chen, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Please, follow me. We have much to discuss. Captain Chen led them through the corridors of the Prometheus to a comfortable meeting room. The walls were lined with windows, or what appeared to be windows, showing views of the stars. A table dominated the center of the room, surrounded by chairs that had been adjusted to accommodate Volanthe physiology. The delegation took their seats, with Eurus at the head of the table facing Captain Chen. For a moment, no one spoke. The two species studied each other across the table, searching for understanding. I will be direct, Eurus said finally. The Volanthe hegemony sent a fleet to destroy your colony. Your ship destroyed that fleet instead. By all rights, you should be at war with us right now. You should be planning our destruction, not meeting with diplomats. She paused. Why? Why invite us here instead of attacking? Captain Chen considered the question carefully. Because destruction was never our goal. Sub-Commander. Defense was. Your fleet came to kill innocent people. We stopped it. That was the beginning and end of our involvement. And the message? Withdraw or face extinction. That was not a threat. It was a warning. A clear statement of consequences. Captain Chen's expression remained calm. We hoped it would be enough. We hoped that witnessing the Prometheus in action would convince your leaders to choose peace. It seems that hope was not misplaced. Eurus felt a flicker of frustration. Captain, with respect, you are speaking as if you had complete control over the situation, as if there was never any danger that your ship would be destroyed, because there was not. The captain said it simply, without arrogance or pride. The Prometheus and its sister ships cannot be destroyed by any weapon your civilization possesses. That is not boasting, Sub-Commander. It is fact. How? The question burst from Eurus before she could stop it. How is that possible? Your species has been spacefaring for 300 years. We have 12,000 years of technological development. How can you possibly have built something that we cannot match? Captain Chen was silent for a moment. Then she rose from her chair and walked to one of the windows. Do you know the story of human space exploration, Sub-Commander? I know the basics. Your first interstellar colony was established approximately 280 years ago. Yes, a world we called New Hope. Chen stared out at the stars. It was a primitive colony by your standards. Simple habitats, basic agriculture, a population of a few thousand optimistic souls who wanted to build something new. They worked hard. They struggled. They survived. She paused. And they found something. Eurus leaned forward. Found something? Ruins. Ancient structures buried deep beneath the planet's surface. At first, our colonists thought they had discovered evidence of a long-dead civilization, archaeological remains millions of years old. They were right, but they were also wrong. Chen turned to face Eurus. What they found was a weapon built by a species that no longer exists, designed to fight an enemy that devoured galaxies. The room fell silent. Eurus's delegation exchanged confused glances. A weapon? You are saying your ships are based on alien technology? More than based on it. They are that technology, adapted and activated by human hands. Chen returned to her seat. The species that built it, we call them the architects. Though we do not know their true name, they understood things about the universe that we are only beginning to grasp. They could manipulate space, time, energy, in ways that violate every law of physics we thought we understood. And they left that knowledge behind when they died. Why? Eurus asked. Why would they leave such power unclaimed? Because they ran out of time. The enemy they were fighting, a force we call the Void. Though again, that is our name. Not theirs, it was too strong, too vast. The architects built 12 weapons to fight it. But before they could use them, they were destroyed. The weapons sat dormant for millions of years, waiting for someone to find them, waiting for someone to complete what the architects could not. And that someone was humanity. Yes. Chen folded her hands on the table. When our scientists uncovered the first archive, the repository of architect knowledge, they thought they had found the greatest discovery in human history. They were wrong. They had found the greatest responsibility in human history. The power to reshape the galaxy. The power to destroy civilizations with a thought. The power to become gods. She met Eurus's eyes with an intensity that made the Volanthi want to look away. We debated for decades about what to do with that power. Some wanted to use it to conquer. Some wanted to destroy it, afraid of what we might become. In the end, we chose a middle path. We would use the power, but only for defense, only to protect ourselves and others from those who would do harm. Like us, Eurus said quietly. Like the hegemony. Your fleet came to murder innocent people. We stopped you. If you had come in peace, you would have found us friendly neighbors. We do not seek conflict. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We simply want to live in peace. And we have the power to ensure that peace is not disturbed. Eurus processed this information slowly. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not developed superior technology through their own efforts. They had inherited it from a species that had fought wars beyond imagination. They were not geniuses. They were not better than the Volanthi. They were simply lucky. And yet, that luck had made them gods. The message you sent. A mysterious human warship appeared, and a full fleet was wiped out almost instantly. Part 5. The New Order. 1 year had passed since the destruction of the Third Expeditionary Fleet. Admiral Eurus stood at the podium in the Grand Chamber of the Hegemony Council, looking out at the faces of the most powerful Volanthi in the galaxy. She was not a sub-commander anymore. The promotion had come 6 months ago, after she had successfully negotiated the peace treaty with humanity. It was the fastest advancement in hegemony history, and she had earned every rank along the way. The council chamber was packed. Every seat was filled with counselors, advisors, military officers, and observers who had come to hear her report. The air was thick with tension. Outside these walls, the hegemony was in turmoil, old traditions clashing with new realities. Hardliners demanding war while moderates urged peace. Today's session would determine which path the Volanthi would take. Distinguished members of the High Council, Eurus began, her voice steady and clear. 1 year ago, I stood before you as a junior officer delivering news of defeat. Today, I stand before you as someone who has seen the future of our galaxy. And I am here to tell you that the choice before us is simple. Adapt or die. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Eurus waited for them to subside before continuing. In the past year, I have traveled extensively through human space. I have visited their colonies, studied their technology, met their leaders. I have also gathered intelligence on the fate of other species who, like us, encountered humanity's titans and had to choose how to respond. She paused. The results of those choices should inform our own. She activated the display behind her, showing a star map marked with the territories of various species. The Korthax Imperium, 40 systems, 3 billion citizens, the most powerful military in their sector before their encounter with humanity. She highlighted their territory. 1 year ago, they refused peace. They believed that their numbers could overwhelm the Titans through sheer force. They assembled the largest fleet in their history, 3,000 warships, and attacked Earth directly. The map shifted, showing the Korthax territory change color from red to gray. The Titan Ares intercepted their fleet. The battle lasted 47 minutes. At the end, every Korthax ship had been destroyed or disabled. Their homeworld surrendered within the week. Today, the Korthax Imperium no longer exists as a political entity. Its people survive, scattered across refugee colonies, but their civilization is gone. She moved to the next territory. The Drell Collective, 30 systems, an economy built on interstellar trade and finance. When they encountered the humans, they tried a different approach, subterfuge. They believed that if they could not defeat the Titans in battle, they could defeat humanity through economic manipulation, through sabotage, through turning other species against them. The Drell territory also faded to gray. The humans discovered their plots within months. They did not respond with war, they simply cut the Drell off from the galactic economy. No species would trade with them. No port would accept their ships. Within 6 months, the Drell Collective collapsed into internal chaos. Their government fell. Their people are still recovering. The Synth Unity, a third territory highlighted. A civilization of artificial intelligences who believed that their machine minds could find weaknesses in the Titan systems. They were wrong. The Titan Hephaestus neutralized their entire network in a single day, not destroyed. Simply shut down. Their consciousness suspended until they agreed to negotiate. She let the silence stretch before speaking again. The Void Callers, a cult civilization that worshipped death and destruction. When they encountered the Titans, they rejoiced. They believed the humans were prophesied destroyers come to cleanse the galaxy. They attacked human colonies, hoping to provoke their own annihilation. Her voice hardened. They got their wish. The Void Callers no longer exist. Not a single ship, not a single colony, not a single survivor. They are the only species the humans have utterly destroyed, and they did so only after all other options were exhausted. She turned off the display and faced the council directly. 4 species, 4 civilizations that chose defiance over peace. 3 are broken, 1 is extinct. In every case, the outcome was the same. Humanity's titans are invincible, and resistance is suicide. Counselor Merith leaned forward. Admiral Eurus, we have heard these reports before. The hardliner faction argues that we should learn from these failures, not repeat them. They propose new weapons, new strategies, new alliances that might succeed where others failed. Then let me address that argument directly. Eurus pulled up new data. In the past year, the Hegemony's Military Research Division has been working continuously on ways to counter the Titans. I have reviewed their findings. She paused. There are none. Protests erupted from the hardliner section of the chamber. Eurus raised her voice above them. The Titans operate on principles that violate the fundamental laws of physics as we understand them. They fold space. They redirect energy. They exist partially outside normal reality. Our scientists cannot explain how they work, let alone develop countermeasures. We could spend 1,000 years and 1 trillion resources, and we would be no closer to matching their power. Then we find allies, shouted Counselor Veth, leader of the hardliner faction. We unite the galaxy against this human threat. Surely if every species combined their fleets, they did. Eurus's voice cut through his protest like a blade. 8 months ago, a coalition of 17 species, including what remained of the Korthax military and the Synth Unity, assembled a combined fleet of over 10,000 warships. They believed that numbers would prevail where individual strength had failed. She brought up a recording sensor data from the battle, captured by long-range observers. The Council watched in silence as 10,000 ships surrounded a single Titan. They watched as that Titan destroyed the entire fleet in less than 3 hours, moving through the combined forces like a scythe through grain. When it was over, not a single coalition vessel remained operational. 10,000 ships, Eurus said quietly. The largest fleet ever assembled in galactic history, defeated by one Titan. Not 12. 1. She met Counselor Veth's eyes. There is no military solution to humanity. There never will be. The hardliner faction fell silent. Around the chamber, counselors who had advocated for war began to look thoughtful, uncertain. The evidence was overwhelming. The conclusion was inescapable. But, Eurus continued, her tone shifting, there is another path. A path that the humans themselves have offered us. A path that leads not to destruction but to prosperity. She changed the display again, now showing economic data. In the past year, 18 species have signed peace treaties with humanity. Do you know what has happened to them? She highlighted their territories in green. The Vorthan Trade Federation. Their economy has grown by 40% since opening trade relations with human colonies. The Kelith Collective. Human medical technology has cured 3 diseases that their doctors considered incurable. The Marathi Assembly. Human agricultural techniques have doubled their food production. More territories lit up green across the map. The humans do not conquer. They do not subjugate. They offer friendship, trade, and cooperation to any species that approaches them in peace. They share their knowledge freely. They protect their allies from aggression. They ask nothing in return except that those allies treat others with the same respect. She turned to face the council fully. Distinguished counselors, I have spent a year studying humanity. I have learned their history, their values, their vision for the galaxy, and I have come to believe that they are not our enemies. They are not conquerors hiding behind a mask of peace. They are exactly what they appear to be. A young species that stumbled onto incredible power and made the choice to use that power for good. How can you be certain? High Counselor Vethak asked. The old leader had remained silent throughout the presentation, but now his eyes were sharp with interest. How do we know this is not a trick? A strategy to make us lower our defenses? Eurus considered the question carefully before answering. Because they do not need tricks, High Counselor. They could have destroyed us a year ago. They could have destroyed every species in the galaxy. Instead, they offered peace. They gave us a year to decide. They showed us mercy when mercy was not required. She took a deep breath. I have met Captain Nora Chen of the Titan Prometheus. I have spoken with her for many hours about humanity and their place in the universe. She told me something that I did not fully understand at the time, but which I have come to believe is true. What did she tell you? She told me that power without restraint is just destruction, that the ability to do something does not mean you should do it, that humanity spent thousands of years learning this lesson the hard way, through wars and suffering that nearly destroyed them. Eurus paused. She told me that they found the Titans at a crossroads in their history, a moment when they had to choose what kind of species they wanted to be, and they chose to be guardians, not conquerors. The chamber was silent. Every face was turned toward Eurus, waiting. I believe her, Eurus said simply. Not because I am naive, not because I have forgotten what they did to our fleet, but because in the years since that battle, they have done nothing to threaten us. They have protected our colonies from pirates. They have offered medical aid to our people. They have treated us with respect and kindness, despite everything we tried to do to them. She looked around the chamber, meeting eyes one by one. The question before us is not whether we can defeat humanity. We cannot. The question is whether we can accept a galaxy where we are not the supreme power, whether we can grow beyond 12,000 years of conquest and domination, whether we can become something better than what we have been. High Counselor Vethak rose slowly from his chair. Despite his age, his presence still commanded the room. Admiral Eurus, you have served the hegemony with distinction. Your analysis is thorough. Your conclusions well-reasoned, but you are asking us to abandon millennia of tradition, to accept a position of weakness, to submit to a species we once considered primitive. I am asking you to survive, Eurus replied, to give our children and grandchildren a future, to recognize that the universe has changed, and that we must change with it. The old counselor was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Very well. The council will vote on ratification of the Human Peace Treaty. All those in favor? Hands rose around the chamber. Not all of them. The hardliner faction remained defiant, their arms crossed, their faces bitter. But enough. More than enough. The vote is recorded, Vethak announced. By a margin of 7-5, the council ratifies the peace treaty with humanity. The Volanthi hegemony will pursue a path of cooperation rather than conflict. Relief flooded through Eurus. It was done. After a year of negotiation, of argument, of fear, it was finally done. The hardliners rose and stalked out of the chamber, their faces dark with anger. Eurus watched them go, knowing that the fight was not truly over. There would be resistance. There would be those who clung to the old ways, who could not accept a universe where Volanthi were not supreme. But they had lost this battle, and over time, they would lose the war. The future belonged to those who could adapt. 3 months later, Wyrus stood at the viewport of a diplomatic vessel approaching Earth. The blue planet grew larger as they approached, small, beautiful, utterly unremarkable to look at. It seemed impossible that this tiny world had produced a species capable of building gods. And yet, here they were. Admiral, her aide, Kethel still with her after all this time, appeared at her shoulder. We are being hailed by Earth Control. They are granting us permission to enter orbit and shuttle down to the surface. Thank you, Kethal. Inform them we are honored by their welcome. As the young officer hurried away, Eurus remained at the viewport. She thought about everything that had led to this moment. The arrogance of Admiral Kethoran, the destruction of the fleet, the terror of facing something beyond comprehension, the long negotiations, the difficult votes, the slow process of convincing her people to choose a new path. And now she was here, the first Volanthi ambassador to Earth, about to set foot on the homeworld of the species that had changed everything. She thought about Captain Chen's words during their first meeting. We simply want to live in peace, and we have the power to ensure that peace is not disturbed. At the time, it had seemed like a threat wrapped in gentle language. Now, she understood it differently. It was a promise, a commitment, a declaration of purpose. The humans had built weapons that could destroy civilizations, and they had chosen, deliberately and consciously, to use those weapons only to protect, to defend, to guard. In a galaxy full of species that conquered and exploited and destroyed, humanity had taken another path. Perhaps that was why they had been given this power. Perhaps the universe itself had recognized something in them, some quality that made them worthy of such responsibility. Or perhaps it was random chance, and the galaxy was simply lucky. Either way, the result was the same. A new order was emerging. A galactic community built on cooperation rather than conquest, protected by 12 invincible ships and the species that commanded them. The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere. Eurus watched as clouds parted to reveal green continents and blue oceans, cities that gleamed in the sunlight, a world teeming with life and potential. This was humanity's home. This small, fragile planet had produced explorers and dreamers, scientists and artists, warriors and peacemakers. It had produced a species that had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times, that had struggled and suffered and grown, that had finally reached the stars and found the power to reshape the universe. And they had chosen mercy. The shuttle landed in a spaceport that was neither more nor less impressive than Volanthi facilities. Officials came forward to greet her, human and alien alike, representatives of the many species that had already joined humanity's growing alliance. They smiled and bowed and spoke words of welcome. Eurus stepped onto Earth's soil and breathed its air. It smelled of growth and life, of rain and flowers, of a world that had nurtured a species through countless generations. Captain Chen was waiting for her at the edge of the landing platform. The human woman had aged slightly since their first meeting, more gray in her hair, deeper lines around her eyes, but her smile was the same. Admiral Eurus, welcome to Earth. Captain Chen? Eurus returned the smile. surprising herself with how genuine it felt. "It is good to see you again." They walked together through the spaceport, past crowds of humans and aliens who had gathered to witness the historic arrival. Children pointed and stared. Adults bowed respectfully. The atmosphere was one of celebration, of hope, of new beginnings. "Your people chose wisely," Chen said as they walked. "I was not certain they would." "Neither was I," Eurus admitted. "The vote was close. There are still those who cannot accept this new reality. There always will be. Change is difficult, especially for civilizations as old as yours." Chen glanced at her. "But change is also necessary. The galaxy is not what it was a year ago. It will never be what it was. The only question is whether each species will adapt to the new order or be left behind." Eurus nodded slowly. "My people ruled this sector for 12,000 years. We believed ourselves invincible, eternal, destined to dominate forever." She paused. "Now we are learning that there are things more important than dominance, more lasting than empire, such as survival, growth, the chance to build something that will outlast us." Eurus looked up at the sky, where distant stars were just beginning to appear in the fading light. "Your Captain Chen Nora, she told me something during our first meeting. She said that humanity spent thousands of years learning that power without restraint is just destruction. I did not fully understand at the time. And now I understand." Eurus turned to face her companion. "The Valanthe hegemony was built on power without restraint. We conquered because we could. We destroyed because we could. We never asked whether we should. And in the end, that brought us to the edge of extinction." She gestured at the bustling spaceport, at the humans and aliens working together, at the ships coming and going from 100 different worlds. "This, what you have built here, this is different. This is power with purpose, strength in service of something greater than itself. I did not believe such a thing was possible until I saw it with my own eyes." Chen was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled. "We are still learning, Admiral. We make mistakes. We disagree with each other. We have our own hardliners who think we should use the Titans to conquer instead of protect." She shrugged. "But we keep trying to be better. That is all anyone can do." They reached the entrance to the diplomatic complex where Eurus would be staying. Chen stopped and turned to face her. "Admiral Eurus, a year ago, your fleet came to destroy one of our colonies. Today, you stand on Earth as our ally and friend. That transformation in you, in your people, gives me hope for the galaxy's future." Eurus thought about everything she had experienced since that terrible day when the Prometheus had appeared. The fear, the humiliation, the slow journey from despair to acceptance to, finally, something like hope. "A year ago," she said slowly, "I thought the universe was simple. The strong ruled, the weak served. Power was the only truth that mattered." She shook her head. "I was wrong. You have shown me a different truth, a better truth." "What truth is that?" Eurus looked up at the stars, now visible in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, 12 Titans waited, invincible guardians of a new galactic order. Somewhere out there, the Valanthe hegemony was beginning its long journey toward a future it had never imagined. "That the strongest thing in the universe," she said, "is not the power to destroy. It is the choice not to use it." Chen smiled. "Perhaps you humans are not the only ones capable of wisdom, Admiral." Eurus returned the smile. "Perhaps not, but you were the first. And for that, the galaxy owes you a debt it can never repay." They stood together in the gathering twilight, two representatives of species that had nearly destroyed each other, now united in a common cause. Behind them, Earth turned slowly beneath the stars. Ahead of them, a future bright with possibility waited to be built. The old order was dead. Long live the new. And somewhere in the depths of space, 12 Titans kept their silent vigil monuments to human wisdom, guardians of galactic peace, and reminders that even the youngest species could change the course of history. All it took was the courage to choose differently.